Hello, and welcome to Lessons from the Workplace. Today we have a special guest, Ariana Friedlander. She is a mother, an entrepreneur, an avid journaler, and she also created Radical Journaling. We're going to have a really interesting conversation today about journaling and hearing Ariana's story about how much journaling has meant to her and how she shares that with other professionals and just general people out there who are interested. So, Ariana, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Joanie, for having me. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today.
So am I, actually. This is a really interesting subject. And ever since we talked about doing this show, I've been thinking about it, and wondering what you're going to tell us about journaling because, it's something that we can all do, but not all of us do for one reason or another. And so I think maybe hopefully you'll give us some starting points there. But I guess to start out, I was just curious. I mean, beyond just this sort of passing fancy for people to do it, like, what's the importance? How did you figure out the importance of journaling?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question. I was gifted my first journal when I was 8 years old,
Mhm.
and I wrote in it sporadically, as a kid would. It's barely legible, and it talks about roller coaster rides and things like that. But I didn't start journaling in earnest until I was in high school. And I actually had dreamed of being a writer when I was in high school. It was one of the things I wanted to be when I grew up. And my high school English teacher publicly criticized my writing in front of the whole class. And I
Oh,
decided that day, yeah, it was terrible. And I decided that day my dream of being a writer was dead. And it's almost like my inner self, true self said, nah. And I went out and bought myself a journal. And
interesting.
yeah, and it was really a place for me to just process my world and what was going on. There was a lot happening in my life. I grew up in a family that had problems with mental health and addiction and things that can force children to grow up a lot faster and become adults sooner than they should be. And so I was really grappling with a lot of that and started journaling as a way to just process and make sense of my world and the things that were happening in my life. Um, and it just kind of took off from there.
Well, that sounds like it's important. I mean, especially in adolescence. And like you said, when there are issues going on, I mean, processing the world, this is something that, in fact, it's a problem right now because kids aren't taking the time out to process. They're just, speaking of addictions, addicted to their phones and social media and having this 8-second attention span is what I've read, the recent statistic on Generation Z. And so this is something that could be really useful to young people, especially.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually last year completed 100 interviews of young professionals, so not quite Gen Z.
Hmm.
Um, and what it was interesting to find was how many young professionals are grappling with these really deep thoughts about life and work and their place and how to show up and just making sense of things. And so I agree that journaling is very valuable for all of us because we're, as humans, meaning making machines. And so we're going
Okay.
to make meaning regardless of whether or not we do it with intention.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting in the professional world too. So, yeah, what would be the purpose of it for a professional to do some journaling?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for a professional to journal. And I think, just processing situations is really helpful. Being able to recognize patterns. So when
Hmm.
when you're writing, you can intentionally track patterns, which I've done with clients. I do coaching using the latest research on neuroscience, and so I'll have clients sometimes track their triggers and what's happening in a conversation that's leading them to get triggered, and then also to process their trigger and to put the story down. And I think we are so, in the society right now, we're driven by so much fear and stress hormones and cortisol and things that just keep us in our primitive brain and telling ourselves stories that are a very thin slice of reality. And so when we journal, we bring it to the light. And like
Okay.
anything we fear, when we bring and shed the light on it, it's not as scary as we thought. And so that happens all the time professionally, where we have a situation, a coworker, a project that we're working on, and things don't go perfect. And maybe something even goes wrong, or someone doesn't show up quite right, or they really upset you, or they don't follow through. And we start making up those stories,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a thin slice of reality. And so when we journal, we can start to kind of process them, and we can expand our perspective, expand our reality, see, you know, the bigger picture, see how we're contributing, see the patterns that we're stuck in our life. And I always like to say, I am the author of my story. Edits, rewrites, and alternative endings are my prerogative.
That's
And
very
so,
empowering.
yeah, so when we journal, at least for me in particular, I rewrite my story in my journal. So there are times I'll start to become aware of a pattern that I'm stuck in, and then I say, I don't have to continue having the same ending. I'm going to rewrite this ending right now, and I'll rewrite the ending.
Oh, interesting. So the ending of a particular kind of situation, so you can rewrite how you would behave differently or react differently or think differently.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could give an example if that would help.
Yes, that would be very useful.
Yeah, so I have found myself stuck in situations where I can tend to give my power away because I want someone to like me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pattern I'd found myself in the last year a couple of times, and I was experiencing that months ago this year, where I was giving my power away to somebody because I desperately just wanted her to like me. And so I was writing about it in my journal, and it hit me, oh my gosh, this is a pattern, this is something I keep experiencing in my life. I'm giving my power away, and I'm going to choose right now to claim my power within and let go of her thoughts about me and her feelings about me, and focus on claiming my own power and standing in my truth and showing up with compassion and controlling myself, because that's the only thing I can control, and let go of trying to please her, get her to like me, get her approval, and anything like that. And I experienced just this dynamic shift both within my body at the time, where it just felt alive and strong, and then how I was able to show up in that situation. It went from me kind of feeling desperate and needy to me feeling confident and secure and being able to show up with power within myself and not giving my power away anymore.
So you met with her subsequently and you were able to stand your ground.
Yeah, I was able to have compassionate boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. So that helped you sort of script it out a little bit, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different way of looking at it in terms of changing your behavior, saying, okay, this is what happened and this is what keeps happening. And now I'm going to change it to be what would be more desirable for me. And that would give me an idea of how to do it in the moment when it
Mm-hmm.
comes up next. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And so intention setting, kind of scripting, as you said, is definitely a great benefit to journaling. Just being able to, process things is really helpful. And, journaling has been proven to improve your overall wellness. That includes mental health as well as physical well-being. Uh,
Really? Can you give some
yeah.
examples of that?
Yeah, in terms, so for myself, I mean,
Hmm.
I'm can share personally, of course. I was an avid journaler in high school. What I was definitely not was an avid physically fit person.
Hmm.
I dreaded gym class. I had childhood asthma. I, hated having to run the mile. I work out regularly now.
And how did
As an
journaling
adult.
help that?
Well, I track it in my journaling. It's part of creating positive habits for myself.
Okay.
Is being able to journal, and I reflecting on what helps me go to the gym, what helps me.
Oh.
So being able to recognize, oh, when I do X, Y, and Z, if I pack my bag the night before, then I'm more likely to go.
Yep.
So being able to reflect on the conditions that lead me to working out and to taking better care of my health. And the physical fitness is just one side. It's also helped me manage my nutritional intake
Hmm.
um, and health in that way as well.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's helping to lead a more thoughtful, reflective, you might say, life, as well as a more intentional one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's
I
how it
mean,
feels.
yeah, like once you actually reflect and see it there, it's hard to ignore it, right? Like, wow,
Hmm.
and it's also very empowering to say, I'm going to do something differently. Or I have noticed a pattern of how when I am in the good place of going to the gym versus the bad place of finding excuses not to go or
Hmm.
whatever it is, so that you can leverage that for yourself. Interesting. Um, wow.
Yeah.
So, is there evidence out there that it's very useful for work, this journaling that
Yeah.
that people do? Do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, well, journaling in terms of work scenarios, especially around conflict, can
Mm,
lead to positive conclusions in conflict
okay.
because it helps us to clarify our thoughts, clarify the situation. Um, we are then able to show up in a way that leads to better outcomes. Because usually we have, so part of what I do, and we talked about this earlier, is the neuroscience of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So what we know through research is that we have these different stimuli, these different experiences that trigger a neurochemical release in our brains. And so that those neurochemical cocktails impact what we're thinking and feeling
Mm-hmm.
and the stories we make up. So we'll have an experience that creates the trigger. And then we jump up this ladder of conclusion and we make up these stories that are often rooted in past experiences from our childhood, and stories that might come out of what keeps us safe, what kept us safe at home or
Mm-hmm.
on the schoolyard and things like that. And while the situation might have a similar sensation to us as an adult and in the workplace, it's not the same situation.
Right. Yes, exactly. I talk to executives about this all the time. Yes, go
Yeah.
on.
So being able to recognize, oh, this is what's happening is I'm making up this story, and being able to get it out of your mind, put it on paper, shed the light on it, and you can start to see where there's these holes or where there's other perspectives that need to be taken into account. And then to reflect on, well, how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be? What kind of impact do I want to have? How do I want to make people feel? Because when we're triggered and we're experiencing a threat or sensing a threat
Right.
and responding to a threat, our primary motive is to protect and preserve our self-interest. But when we can step back and realize this perception of a threat is not matching reality because our neurochemicals are not often matching the reality we're facing. We're not in imminent danger. There's not a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah. Although sometimes people seem like them, right?
Well, yeah, and sometimes people see like them, and earlier this year there was a jogger in Fort Collins
Oh
where I
no.
live that was attacked by a mountain lion. So occasionally it happens in modern life, but most of the time that's not that case, and especially at work, we're not actually in imminent danger. And
Mhm.
so being able to write in a journal and step back, see other perspectives, see our own stories playing out, and just open up to another reality, another person's story, and then
Wow.
setting that intention of I'm going to show up this way.
Yeah. So I want to just reflect back to you a couple of things that I got out of this because this is so powerful. First of all, especially at work, this is the kind of work that I do is with people at work. So you have some kind of interaction, it doesn't go well, right? And instead of beating yourself up over it, right, which people tend to do, or get angry or whatever, journal it out and analyze it, sort of look at it, reflect on what happened. And if you do this often enough, you'll see a pattern, to help make a change in the future. And go back and then retry, or you can even have this opportunity to share this with somebody and say, hey, I noticed that, whatever, I overreacted because, whatever reasons, but uh, to to sort of change the way that the interaction goes from there to make it positive, even for both people, not
Yeah.
necessarily even the individual. And, you know, the reason why I'm highlighting this, Ariana, because so many people are so reticent to think of like making a mistake, you know, or admitting a mistake to somebody else. But maybe it's just taking the time to admit it to themselves of like what's going on here, and it's not necessarily a mistake. It's just it is. It's from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the connections that you're drawing are really giving me a lot to pause and think about for sure as well. And yeah, that ability to admit things to ourselves, I think,
Hmm.
really opens up the world of possibilities. And that's, one of the journaling prompts I shared on my blog a while back was, to help someone have a breakthrough journaling session is, what are you avoiding writing about?
Ooh, yeah.
What's constantly on your mind and you're avoiding writing about it because you have shame or fear or some other big feelings surrounding it, and
Hmm.
to actually write it down. And so it can be, it can feel hard or awkward or challenging in those moments. And again, it's shining the light on these things that when we don't, they fester. And it's just, a story that comes to mind to me to illustrate that. When I was a
Hmm.
child, my brother would sometimes force me to watch horror movies,
Oh
as
boy.
older brothers are always good for.
Hmm.
And so one time it was Freddy Krueger at my grandparents' house. So that night, all night long, I kept looking at this hanging plant, and I saw Freddy Krueger's face all night long. I
Oh
was convinced
no.
that it was
That's
Freddy Krueger.
awful.
And I couldn't remember what was actually there. It was like I couldn't place another object in that space. It was clearly Freddy Krueger's face, and I was stuck there the rest of the night. And in the morning, the sun comes out, and I see that it's this hanging spider plant.
Hmm.
It's just a plant. It's nothing really scary. And I think it's the same thing with the way we make things up in our mind about our mistakes, or the problems that we're experiencing, the challenges we're facing. We see Freddy Krueger when it's just a spider plant.
Yeah. I know that's so good. I was actually just talking to somebody the other day about something that happened that they had said something, and it hit me like, oh, should I go back and talk to them? Should I go back and do this? And I said, do you think that they're really ruminating about this the way you are? I bet you they just, brushed it off and kept moving on with their day. I mean, it wasn't that big a deal. And so you're saying, yeah, it was just a spider plant. Don't don't make it out to be something that it doesn't have to be. But
And
I think,
sometimes we need to
yeah.
release it from our bodies.
Oh, yeah. No, that's
Because
really
when
good.
we do experience the stress hormones, particularly, in nature, when an animal experiences a stress hormone, they shake it off. Like giraffes shake it off after the run.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so, yeah, so we need to release that energy
Yep. Well,
from
okay,
our
I have a
bodies.
few questions a little bit on the how, because I kind of want to go
Okay.
into like why,
Yeah.
what's the purpose. But okay, so here's my beautiful journal, one of my
Ooh,
journals that
that
I
is
love,
really
right?
pretty.
Okay, yeah. This
Is
was
it
a
like bumpy too?
yes,
Like,
it they're
oh,
beads
it's
and
tactile. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I like it.
it's like a satin kind of fabric and all this. But there are times when I want to write in my journal, but there are also times when like at this point in my life, I'm much faster at typing
Right.
than writing. And so I want to know, is there a way that you're supposed to journal? Like, does it have to be in a nice little book like this, or,
Mhm.
or does it have to be online, or what is it? How do you
Yeah.
journal? What's a good journal?
Yeah. So one of the things we say in radical journaling is journaler's choice.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you would say that. I really
Yes,
was.
it is one of the things that I have found is really critical, because journaling is about cultivating a relationship with your inner thoughts and
Hmm.
connecting with your higher self, your truer self, your authentic self, whatever framing works for you, right? It's
Hmm.
that time where you come up with some insight or wisdom you don't know where it came from.
Hmm.
That's what journaling helps you do. Distinguish between the voice of your inner genius, and your inner critic,
Okay.
is one of the things I like to say. So really, it's journaler's choice. It's not about one right or wrong way to
Hmm.
journal. It's the best way for you. It's what works well for you. So I have a client that loves to journal online. He has a OneNote he works in, he has a
Mhm.
stylus pen, so he can write by hand, but he loves
Oh.
to do it digitally, and that works for him. I have other clients that use Google Docs and just will type up,
Mhm.
pages at a time in Google Docs. There's no one right or wrong way. I've worked with other people that will journal in images and do a
Okay.
spread and just like kind of mind map it.
Nice. This is so creative, and it's definitely depending on, yeah, what works for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really all about what works for you. And I just started a new journal like yesterday,
Yeah.
my new Moleskin,
Mhm.
and that's one of my journals. I also have spiral bound notebooks that I'll write in for when I do my morning journaling practice. And I love to write by hand. It's for me. It's really I get stuck in screen trance, and
Yeah.
so having my journal, I don't just do stream of consciousness writing. I plan out my whole life in my journal essentially.
Mhm.
So I plan my day. I prioritize what I'm going to do. And for me, having this tactical thing, this pen and paper bound book that I reference helps me stay focused when I am in front of a screen. So I don't just get
Okay.
sucked into la la land.
Yeah.
I'm doing what's important and what I need to do. Yeah, but
You
that's what
know,
works for me.
that makes a good point though, because I mean, my next question was going to be about people being so busy. And, again, like the excuse for not going to the gym, right? The excuse for not journaling. Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have my book, whatever. Oh, whatever. I have this, that, what,
Yeah.
what do you say to folks? How long does it take to journal? I mean, what kind of an investment is it?
Yeah. Again, journaler's choice, right?
Good.
So
I was hoping you'd say that again. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So not everyone is going to be like, I will often take 45 minutes in the morning to go through
Okay.
heart-centered meditation and then
Hmm.
journaling.
Hmm.
If I can take an hour, beautiful, love it. Sometimes this morning took a half hour.
Okay.
So it just depends. But just even 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just to get started is really important. And I would say, if busy is the thing that's stopping you from journaling, then maybe journal about that.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Who are you busy for?
Mhm.
Is it for yourself? Is it for other people? What is the point of this busyness? And to just reflect on that, because I think we are addicted to busyness. Busy
Mhm.
feels good, and stillness is powerful and can be hard and awkward. And yet, there are things that everyone wants to change in their lives. I haven't met one person that's not aspiring to something, even if their aspiration is to figure out what they're aspiring to.
Yeah,
a,
interesting.
a couple of conversations like that. Uh, Everyone's aspiring to something. And so, if what is it that you want to change? And if you're too busy being busy or too busy doing a lot of things and not really being present, what's that all about?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could see some of this, like you were just talking about. People are sort of addicted to being busy, and part of that, I think, is so you don't have to be with yourself, right? It's sort of avoiding that because that is when those negative images might come up, or the self-criticism or the fears, and finding a way to journal about those, but not necessarily having to attack it head on, right, as a
Mhm.
start. Because I'm sort of hearing you
Oh,
saying
yeah.
there are ways to get going, even just say, why am I not journaling? That's
Hmm.
not a very scary question. I mean, it's okay. I could handle that one. Well, I'll come up with all the different excuses I have and this and that, but then it will get to go a little bit deeper, right? Well,
Hmm.
why am I so busy? Like, what would be some of your tips for people who are, yeah, I don't know, reluctant, or maybe just newbies? People who are like, I don't know. I work with like a lot of engineers, for example. They're like, I'm not, like woo woo. I'm not going to like do all this, getting in touch and all that. But how would you say that, and it's a very functional thing to do. How would you approach that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny you say the engineering piece because I've worked with so many engineers that carry around journals. So
Yeah.
it does seem like that capturing of your ideas, right? That cultivating a relationship with your thoughts. And if you're like engineering your mind,
Mhm.
and that's one
I
of
would
the
say
things I
that the
talk about.
engineers, this is interesting because the engineers would want to capture any like inventive ideas or for
Mhm.
those kinds of things, but about themselves, that's a
Mm,
big shift. So
yeah.
curious, like how you would, look inwards.
Well, I think one of the powerful questions to always ask is what's stopping you?
Hmm.
What is getting in the way? What are you thinking about when someone suggests journaling? What's the first thought that comes into your mind? Brene Brown would call this the story you're telling yourself. That's what she writes about in her books a lot. I can't remember
Right.
who's the person that actually started that. I don't think that was originally from her. But I think that framing of the story I'm telling myself is even that I find can be a roadblock for some people because
Hmm.
a lot of us don't think we're good storytellers. So just what's the first thought that came into your mind about journaling when someone suggested that?
That's a
And
good place to start.
yeah, and that's all it is, and that's essentially the story without getting to the
Yeah.
story in that way.
That's kind of interesting because I was thinking, I mean, not the word journaling, because journaling is a little bit different, and maybe you want to explain that to us too, but like the diary. I mean, I think
Mm.
of, the whatever 10-year-old girl with a pink fluffy diary with a little lock on the outside,
That's the one I got when I was
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And I
And
broke the lock because I don't know where the key is. And
oh,
I was like,
right.
what did I write it here?
But here you're talking to some professional, person going, I don't want to look like that. So, but maybe even just talking about that. Well, why is that? And that's,
What are
keep
yeah,
asking why.
what are those apprehensions? What are the
Hmm.
fears? What are the concerns? Shed Shine the light on them.
Yeah.
You don't have to succumb to these fears that aren't real. And we have all of these things going on in our thoughts that are perceived threats or perceptions of a situation, and it's not the full breadth of it. And just think of the number of times anyone has gone for a walk and saw a stick and thought it was a snake and went,
Oh
right? Like
gosh. Yeah.
we are doing
Yeah.
that constantly throughout the day. And that's
Hmm.
essentially what journaling helps you do is recognize that it was a stick and not a snake.
Okay. Well, so Ariana, you said that you have a blog on this and you coach people. Tell us about what you do and how you help people journal and make it effective.
Yeah. So, a lot of it, especially when I do coaching, so I do a lot of coaching around a framework called conversational intelligence
Hmm.
that's based on the neuroscience of conversation. And I help professionals elevate their conversational intelligence. So, Judith Glaser is the creator of that framework, and she was famous for saying everything happens through conversation. And journaling is just a conversation with yourself. So if you're going to elevate how you're showing up in conversation with others, you have to elevate how you're showing up in conversation with yourself first and foremost. And
That is really deep. I mean, I'm just sitting here like not responding because I'm like, wow, big. Yeah. So huge, huge, huge. Okay, go on.
yeah, it is. It's really huge. And if you're like me, you might have a really cruel, can I curse? Like I have had and have been working years to shift my own inner dialogue from one of, wow, you suck, Ariana, to you did your best. Like,
Uh-huh.
just something that's a little more positive and less hurtful.
A little
Um,
more compassion,
yes,
self-compassion.
a lot more
Yeah, a
compassion.
lot more. Yeah, right.
Like from
Be-
none to some.
yeah.
Um, so, a lot of what I'll do with my clients when I work with them around coaching is I always provide customized reflection questions. Uh,
Okay.
so, we'll engage and, where are you at? What are you dealing with? What's going on? And I have a gift for asking questions.
I can
it's
tell you've asked already, like, dozens of them.
they just come to me. I can't explain it other than they just come to me. And so after I meet with a client, I'll just come up with a list of questions and I'll say, take the ones that you want, leave the rest. And so they'll journal about them. Sometimes they will process the question on a run and then journal about something that came out of processing the
Right.
question on a run. Everyone is different, but it really is helping leaders, professionals shift a pattern where they're stuck.
Okay.
Where are we stuck? What are we stuck with? And then how do we shift that into something more positive, creating a positive change that they want in their life or in their work? Sometimes it's an interaction dynamic. I had a client I worked with a few years ago that was, she lost her mojo at work and she kept getting in these yelling matches with her boss. And it needed to stop, and she wanted it to stop, and they needed it to stop, and they didn't want to lose her because she was a critical team player. She had knowledge that was very unusual. And for her, we worked together and she came up with these ideas for how to use her journal that we were kind of co-creating these solutions, and it really helped her. And the major breakthrough happened when she was talking to her boss and he said something that just pissed her off.
Oh,
And
okay.
instead of yelling back at him, she thought, I'm going to write about this in my journal later.
Perfect. Yeah. Wow. That's actually a way to slow things down in the moment too, to
Mhm.
just stop the trigger and say,
Yep.
okay, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Um, so how can people get in touch with you? I mean, we'll have your info in our show notes, but if you wanted to just sort of say a quick Twitter or email or phone, or what is it? What's the best way?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am on Twitter, Ariana F on Twitter. And then my company is Rosabella Consulting. So you can find me on my company
Mhm.
website, Rosabella Consulting. And then I'll, include the links to the other ways to get in touch as well. I do Facebook. So anything Rosabella Consulting, and then radical journaling stuff will be getting online soon. So uh,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, this has been extremely valuable. So thank you so much for sharing both the importance of it as well as just some tips on how to get started and maybe some hopes for helping people empower themselves. So I think this has been really useful, like a life skill here to bring to the workplace or just anywhere. So thank you, Ariana.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to connect and to share my passion with you and your listeners, because this is something that I do think can be a game changer for people. So I'm excited to share it.
Well, great. And thanks to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in. Don't forget to follow, rate, and review us at Lessons from the Workplace.